Hiya. Tim and I are very lucky in that we live right bordering on to the fields, and so most days for our daily exercise we're able to wander out into the countryside for a good walk. And today I want to tell you a little bit about two of the walks that we've done recently and our encounters with some sheep. The first walk that I want to talk about is when we came across some sheep in a field, as you often do at this time of year, with their lambs. And most of the lambs were with their mothers grazing away, and as is fairly normal, most of them disappeared fairly quickly as soon as they saw us coming. But there was one little lamb that was sound asleep on the grass with no mother sheep in sight. And as we walked past, the lamb suddenly obviously heard something and woke up, got to its feet rather dreamily, and then looked rather panicked and started bleating for its mother. As it bleated, so did lots of other sheep start bleating. And it was fascinating because all these sheep around the field, they were all bleating, and they all sounded, to me, they sounded exactly the same. And I was thinking, how's the lamb going to know where to go? And there were some sheep really very close to the lamb, but interestingly, the lamb didn't go to those sheep. What the lamb did was the lamb ran to a sheep right at the far end of the field in the opposite corner. There, of course, was its mother. How did the lamb know that was its mum, not one of these other sheep closer by to it? The answer, of course, the lamb knew its mother's voice. And then the next story to tell you is on another day we wandered into another field again with lambs and sheep in it. And the sheep started bleating and the lambs started running, except for this one lamb which had a number 12 branded on its back. And number 12, instead of running to its mother, ran to us. And it wouldn't leave us alone. And of course we had nothing to give it. We weren't the shepherd or the farmer. We certainly weren't the mother sheep. It was rather like this lamb wasn't taking any notice, or maybe wasn't even aware of its own mother's voice. It was running to the wrong place. It was running somewhere where it wouldn't find sustenance and safety. Now, you're probably familiar with a verse from John chapter 10, which says this: "My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me." Jesus here, of course, is comparing himself to a shepherd and us to the sheep. But actually the principle is a little bit the same when we think about the stories that I've just been telling you. Do you know Jesus' voice? Just as that lamb in my first story knew its mother's voice, do you know God's voice? He knows us, he hears us, he's waiting for us to go running to him, because he's the place where we find safety, where we find sustenance, where we find hope, where we find comfort. The second little lamb, of course, didn't seem to know its mother's voice. It ran to the voices who weren't able to offer it those things. What voice do you know? This may be a good time for many of us, when we might have more time than we'd ordinarily have, to spend more time getting to know God's voice. And how do we do that? Well, we spend time with him. We get to know people's voices when we spend time with them. Time reading the Bible, time sitting in the quiet, just praying silently. We don't always have to use words to pray, just sitting and inviting God into the presence. Time to be still and time to listen. And remember that as you listen, God is a God of love. That's one way to ensure that the voice you're listening to is the right voice. Is the voice that you're hearing a loving voice. So I encourage you in these days of isolation, spend some time in the Bible, in the quiet, listening to the voice of God. How's He speaking to you? It might be through words of scripture, it might be in the silence, it might be through the loving words of a neighbour who phones up to find out how you are. We can expect God to speak, and He will speak, but we need to learn to listen. So I just invite you now to join me in prayer. Loving God, thank you that you know us intimately. Thank you that in you we can find safety and love. Help us to grow to know you more day by day, that we may recognise your loving voice, calling us to you, assuring us of your love. Amen. There's a link in the description part of this video that will take you to the lovely song, the lovely setting of Psalm 23, which talks about us putting our trust in God. You might like to press that link and listen to that now. God bless you.